Hello and welcome to Sterling Armory Sword Talk. This is episode 52, and we have a good one tonight. We're going to be revisiting a somewhat older topic, but it's been a while. We started these a couple years ago, so figured it's a good time to revisit some topics. But if you're new to our channel here at Sterling Armory, we are sword makers, and we have a Facebook page. Now our webpage is finally up, so webpage is active. There are some blades on there for sale. But yeah, let's bring on the crew, and we have a special guest for today as well. So let's bring them on. So first up, Colton, I'm gonna do a quick intro, and then we'll bring on our special guest.
Sounds good. Me first? Oh, you already. Hey, I'm Colton. Copperthorn. We went over this last time. I'm so bad at this.
Yeah. So am I. That's all right.
You can find me at all of the places he just mentioned before.
Yeah. Alrighty. So yeah, tonight we have a special guest. So let's go ahead and bring Phil on. Ta-da!
Hi guys. Hi.
Hey.
Hi guys.
So Phil, we call the Cuisinart Martin because definitely the best cutter around. So yeah, we're excited to have Phil on tonight, especially for the topic we have. So we're going back to an old topic. Actually, before I even get to that, so before we go into the topic, we always talk about what we're drinking. Phil, I apologize, I forgot to remind you of that. So I don't know if you have a drink, but you do.
Perfect.
There you go. Lots of
Ooh.
good meat.
Hey, you've got the peanut butter?
Peanut butter jelly meat.
Yeah, we were just talking about that actually.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah. So I actually have something peanut buttery as well, but it's the good old Smokies peanut butter whiskey. I actually have too many bottles of this, so I got to start drinking it faster. so cheers. Colton, what are you drinking?
I'm trying a Incline Marionberry apple cider of some kind. I don't know. That's
good.
Really. I literally haven't tried it yet. I just dumped it in and first taste, I guess.
Is that local? It looks like it's local.
Oh, it's pretty good. A little sour. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know where it's from.
Yeah. And Phil, actually, I forgot to actually let you do an intro. So if you want to say anything, as an intro and talk about what you're drinking.
Oh, sure. I'm Phillip Martin. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel under my name, Phillip Martin. It used to be called Aikidoka. And I'm on Facebook, again under Phillip Martin. And I teach cutting at the Phoenix Society of Historical Swordsmanship. In fact, I'll be teaching a cutting class in a couple days.
And Josh probably won't show up.
I'll remind him. But...
Every time I was like, you need to get over there. Because he loves them, and he's so excited every time he gets back from any of those classes. It's funny to see him so giddy. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us. And if you guys are ever in the Phoenix area, definitely check out Phil's classes and the Phoenix Society. How often do you hold those cutting classes? Like once a month or?
Once a month. Yeah. The last Sunday of every month.
Last Sunday of every month. Perfect. Yeah. So if you find yourself in Phoenix, definitely check that out if you're into HEMA cutting at all, or actually any sort of cutting, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you guys focus on HEMA cutting there, or do you just do all sorts of different kinds?
We focus on HEMA cutting, but I mean, sometimes people bring a katana in or other weapons, so it's not necessarily always HEMA.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that brings us to our topic of the day. So yeah, we went back and we're looking at some old topics that we did very early on, and we're wondering, hey, are any of these kind of out of date, or can we update? And our favorite swords was definitely a big one because that changes over time. And we wanted to look at our favorite types of swords, but now looking at them from mainly historical perspectives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be swords in the European arts. It could be anything. So that's what we're going to cover today. I have some show and tell with some images, and I believe Phil has some show and tell in person, which would be cool to see. So yeah, I think a lot of people ask, like, where do you get your designs from when you're making blades, and what inspires you to make blades? And I think what I show here, my favorite pieces from various museums that I've got a chance to study, I think it'll be really obvious why my swords look the way they do and why they're designed the way they're designed, because those are the pieces that I happen to like. So, so yeah, I'm gonna share some of those today, and then we'll also talk about some that we may not have images or pieces to share as well. So I guess should I start, or Phil, do you want to start with one? Or
Go ahead.
yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So I'm trying to think of how best way to split these up. I guess I'll start with, I'll kind of go museum by museum. So one of the first museums I went to in the U.S., I should say, because I actually went to some more in Europe before I went to ones in the U.S., was the Met. And the Met has some of my favorite pieces all over the place. So let's add that image here. So here we go. So this is an image. I picked this one because it has a lot of blades that if I had to just pick a blade to take to either a duel or a battle or anything else, they're great all around do-it-all swords. And I think you'll notice, or anyone who picks up one of my blades will probably notice that it's a cut thrust piece typically. It's kind of geared towards both, but it's also somewhat beefy, so it could be also a defensive weapon as well. It kind of fills that all-around role, and that's kind of what I always tend to lean that way. I don't know why. It's just what I like. But there's two, or actually three pieces in here that really lean towards that. The first one is, actually you can't see my cursor, can you? Mm-hmm. So how do I? So the the third piece to the right, which is an arming sword, or third piece from the left, I should say, which is an arming sword with the fishtail pommel there. That piece is absolutely beautiful. It's a cut and thrust. I would call that a Type 18. Some would argue it's a Type 15. But the edges are slightly curved. And it's a pretty beefy blade. It's a little over a 1/4 inch at the base with super decent distal taper. And every blade in this case is somewhat like that. Some are much more oriented towards thrusting only. This particular one is a cut and thrust blade. It's pretty evenly distributed between the two different tasks. The other one is it's more cut centric, but in the upper right corner, that arming sword. Phil, can you see that image clearly? I know it's a little smaller on your phone there. That arming sword. Yeah, it's kind of hidden behind another blade there. But that arming sword is
serving quillins.
Yeah, also a Type 18. It's a shorter Type 18 than I would typically like, but I got other ones coming later. So, but that Type 18 is, again, pretty stout for its size, and it's a great cutter. It's a wider version. So normally the blades out of this find, which I'm trying to remember what they call this find, the Castellan find. Usually the wheel pommel versions have wider blades and are more cut-centric, whereas the fishtail blades tend to be more narrow and more thrust-centric. So both the ones I'm looking at are a good mixture of both. But my favorite blade out of this whole case, and I've made 2 or 3 versions of it now, is that one on the far right, that monster two-hander. I'm hoping next time we go to the Met, I'm trying to drag Colton and Josh to go with me, and that's the one piece we want to try to see if we can get our hands on. It's a beautiful piece, and I'm shocked that there isn't a modern replica, actually, of a lot of these swords. So a lot of the swords here in this case, you don't find replicas of these much, like in terms of exact replicas. But they're all beautiful pieces. So yeah, you're going to see that as a theme throughout my favorite type of historical blades when it comes to European blades, is this sort of Type 18 cut and thrust centric. Little on the beefy side, so you could use it for dueling. You can use it for full-on, war type plate-on-plate armor stuff. So yeah, so that's and in terms of balance and point of balance and how the blades actually feel and move. They all somewhat move kind of similarly. They're balanced more back towards the guard than your typical longsword or arming sword typically would be, and they have pretty beefy hilts. So that's just, I know a lot of folks don't like that, but I personally do. So again, we all have our own tastes, right? So yeah, Phil, have you had a chance to see these? I don't know if you've been to the Met.
I have not. I've just seen pictures.
Yeah, this is I'm trying to remember. So when what's his Mythbusters guy? Adam Savage. There. When Adam Savage was at the Met, I know he handled the 2 left swords on this image, but I don't know if he held the other ones. I'll have to go back to that video and watch. But yeah, so usually the people's most favorite blade from the Met is that wide Alexandria blade, and although I have versions of that, I'm actually not a fan of this. So, mainly because they're so thin, and that's for me. That's not my taste. Even though they're heavy, they're because they're so wide. The blades, I don't know how well they would actually hold up in like a plate armor battle. I don't think they would actually hold up that well at all. But who knows? So, but my taste leans towards that sort of stiffer Type 18. Alrighty. So that's my first round. I got a lot of rounds to go. Any questions, or you guys have any thoughts on those?
I was curious about that one on the very far left. The pommel looks more like an actual sphere.
It is.
Okay,
yeah, it's a hollow.
It's just a full-on sphere. Okay.
Yeah, it's a hollow sphere, and the guard itself has this weird twist to it as well, and it's also somewhat hollow. So that blade is actually pretty light compared to a lot of blades in this particular cabinet.
Interesting.
Yeah, the other one I want to actually make out of this cabinet is that second one on the right.
Yeah, that one's super interesting.
Yeah, I knew. Was it you that was talking about?
Yeah, we've talked about that a couple times. Yeah. Like, we might have to try that.
Yeah, it's a really neat piece. So just because it's so different, right?
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. All right, Phil, you got one for us?
Sure. So my approach to this list of favorites was to go outside of HEMA. Yeah. If you watch my YouTube channel, I cut with a lot of swords that are not HEMA related. I enjoy trying new types of swords that look interesting and maybe challenging to cut with. I remember cutting with one of the Thracian Sikas from Spartacus.
Oh, really?
If you watch that television show.
Yeah.
So I bought one of those, sharpened the inner curve.
I was going to ask the inner. I was going to ask if you were cutting with the inner or the outer edge.
The inner, so like a sickle.
Yeah.
And so the way that I pictured a gladiator using it would be with like a small shield, like a buckler size. I mean, I think there are some gladiators who use 2 swords, so who would use it like Spartacus did in the television series with one in each hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did some cutting with that. Did a double cut combination, hold the buckler in the other hand. That was the first video that Matthew Jensen left a comment there saying, "Okay, next time try with a shovel."
Yeah.
So, but I enjoy taking weapons like that and trying to make them work.
Yeah.
So one of the types of swords that's not in HEMA because it's not European that I've really become interested in are Ottoman Killage.
Yeah, super curved.
And yeah, so it's both the fact that it's super curvy and the interesting history. But yeah, the super curviness of it, just from a practical aspect, it changes things a lot, right? When you have a curve that's that extreme, it all of a sudden becomes a very, very close-up weapon. Matt Easton has done a few videos on fighting with very curved swords like this, so they're really for a last ditch. Someone is about to tackle you or whatever. They're in punching range almost, and so you're cutting large slashing cuts with a very curved sword. Yeah. Another interesting thing about these, though, this type of killage, if you notice, the tip is almost like a double-edged dagger, sort of a curved dagger, and it's reinforced. The spine is real thick there and all the way back. So this is actually also very effective for thrusting. I don't know if you've seen any. Yeah, so these are typically used also with bucklers. Yeah. So I've seen some Turkish martial artists. Of practicing with them. And what they can do is, if your opponent has a buckler, you can stab them from around their buckler, from the side, the top, from up underneath their buckler. So you're coming in at an angle like this, around their buckler. And that's one of the advantages of the saber in a fight in general, is that you can attack from odd angles. If you're used to using a straight sword, then you can find with a saber you can go around someone else's sword if it's straight. So anyway, it's a very interesting weapon. I haven't done a lot of practicing with it, but it's something that really appeals to me, and then also just trying to figure out how to use it effectively.
Yeah,
this was pretty nicely made. Made by a guy in Istanbul.
Oh, nice. They usually kind of lock your wrist in, don't they, too? Or I guess not that type. That type doesn't. But there's some that do lock your wrist in so you can't actually flex, right?
Yeah. Well, some of the Indian swords, a lot of those have a disc that don't let your hand extend forward, because they want it. I think they want to force a very close slashing cut rather than chopping cut. This is really a sword like this. You can wear it, and someone could be, like I say, punching distance away, and you could draw it and just slice them open, even if they're like 2 feet away from you, right? Because it's such a curved sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other question I had on those. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other question I had on those, and I'm not well versed in those types of swords at all, but just from the nature of the look of those, it seems like they're also geared towards some cavalry use as well. So as you're riding, when you're slicing through, it can do that draw cut without very much movement from the rider, as long as your horse is going.
Could be.
Right?
Could be. Yeah. Yeah. It depends on the length of the blade. I mean, this one is long enough that I think, you could do it from horseback.
Yeah.
Some of the later Kiliches, I believe they're called Palas, would be, only about this long, and they'd be much more for just close in fighting.
Yeah.
But they did a good job on this one, because you can see the really deep fullering.
Yeah, I was noticing that.
They've taken a lot of the weight out. So this is a very relatively light, maneuverable sword for its size. Another interesting bit of history, Vlad Dracula almost certainly would have used a sword like this. A lot of the Christian paintings of him, because he was at a certain point in time, he was a hero of Christendom, fighting against the Ottoman Empire and so forth. And he's pictured, if you have a Christian artist, they'll often have him with a cruciform hilted long sword, or because that was the type of sword that the righteous would use, right? But in reality, he was raised by the Ottomans as a hostage. His father gave him as a hostage along with his younger brother, and so he would have learned to use a kilich like this. And there are some paintings of him with the kilich in the scabbard. You can see this type of a hilt sticking out. So
the painting I have in my brain has one of those. So
right.
You can see that. You can see that hilt on it. So that's super cool.
Yeah.
There's been a few of those that I've held, but super nice.
That is really nice.
There's been a few of those that I've held, not historical ones, but like reproduction ones, but that have been quite nice. So they're not too common though.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say there are a lot of cheaper reproductions that aren't as nice. But finding a nice one, especially if it's from Turkey, it'll often have nice Turkish walnut grips. And I mean, there are a number of people who, want to keep alive the sword making traditions in Turkey. I have another, I don't have it here, but I have another kilich that was made by, I think his name is Osman Baskert. He's a younger Turkish sword maker who makes really high end reproductions. And I placed an order with him probably, I think it was unfortunately right before COVID hit.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just really getting going with his custom swords. And I think the original estimate was like maybe 7 or 8 months for it, and ended up being like 2.5 years.
Wow.
But over that time, he became, I think he said, a state artist or a state recognized artist.
Wow.
So they recognized him as someone who was preserving the art of making sword making, of making, traditional Ottoman weapons. But also, he was a researcher. So he was going out and looking at swords that have been excavated. And so he made a really nice reproduction, based on some of the work that he'd seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a few people who are trying to keep the tradition alive. So it's nice to find a good one.
Yeah, no doubt. So what's neat is that's kind of popping up all over, and I think that's kind of due to, I think, all of these communities, whether it's HEMA or the Chinese cutting arts now or the Japanese arts, right? I think it's expanding. So you're seeing like the guys doing Persian blades. A lot of the guys in India now looking at their own history and their own blades and remaking those and trying to make them. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see that resurgence. So. Yeah, I'm excited, especially. So I'm a huge fan of the guys in India who do Windlass and all those different companies out there. Sadly, they work under Windlass, right? So you don't hear the Smiths names, and I think that kind of, it doesn't do them justice, right? I mean, sometimes they will mention a name or two, but the guys working there are just like us, right? They just want to make swords, and some of them are just there for, it's their normal job, but a lot of them are there because they're passionate about blades, and they're passionate about their blades from India, and occasionally they'll go off on their own and post, hey, here's me, I worked for this company or that, but here's something I made myself, and it's exciting to see, all that enthusiasm, right? So that's pretty slick.
Yeah. So for me, this just ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
It's historically interesting. It's physically interesting. It's going to be physically challenging, I'm sure, to adjust to such a short-ranged weapon. They'll probably, in the first few cuts, just make deep gashes into the tatami without going through, right? It's so curved and so short.
Yeah, that's what happened in our saber cutting at Fright Fight last year, right? A lot of folks just cut into the mat just a few inches, right? And then, kind of draw right past it. So not knowing, how to cut with a saber. So
I can't.
That was fun.
Can't
Colton, you having problems with your camera?
I know. It's not focusing. I don't know. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
I didn't want to interrupt there, be like, aha, but there we go.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Have you tried cutting with that yet or no?
I think I have. I did try when I first got it, but I've got so many things that I want to do in reviews that I'm behind on. So but I definitely want to do a review of that sword. I'll probably prioritize that for sometime soon.
I think that'd be cool to see do a cut to thrust with that guy.
That would be an interesting thrust for sure.
Yeah,
like I say, I found this video of the guy practicing, and he would sort of leap forward and do an overhand thrust, like over the top of a shield.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very similar to some of the Chinese Dao work, but the Daos aren't anywhere near as curved as those are, right? So,
right.
Yeah. Neat. Alrighty. Well, I guess it's back to me. So I'm going to jump over to, let's see. I guess I'll jump to the Royal Armory. So I had a bunch of images for each museum that I was at, where I had favorite pieces. That I actually had an arming sword and a long sword from each museum, but I'm being limited. So we found StreamYards it's updated a lot, and we can share images directly now, which is great because those images are a lot clearer. However, it limits the amount of images we share. So I had to pull out a lot of images I planned to share just to make room. But I'll talk to some of the other ones. So jumping from the Met over to the Royal Armories, here's one that I think a lot of people actually might know, but this one was a lot of fun because I got a chance to study it in person. And a lot of folks might recognize this because Matt Easton worked with the Windlass to do a reproduction of this. And I actually have it in the back here, but I haven't unboxed it yet. So I'm going to do a review of that at some point. So I got to get my cutting stand built first on my newer ones. But I'm really curious because I did play with this blade for quite a while, and I measured every inch of that thing. So this one, when I was at the Royal Armories, this is in Leeds, by the way. So I was there, I think 2 years ago, maybe 3. And then I had this blade, and then I also had that Type 17 that they also recreated. So I got a chance to study both of those. But this one, if you remember back to what I was saying on my earlier ones at the Met, is I don't know why, but I'm really drawn towards these types of Type 18s that are really cut and thrust focused, kind of a dual use blade. But they're also quite beefy, so if you're doing any blocking, anywhere in the forward of the blade, it's a very stiff piece of steel that's usually over a 1/4 inch thick. This one's actually a bit thicker than that. So, but even though that pommel is somewhat hollow, the blade is still quite. I don't want to say beefy. It's not really beefy. It's still a very lively blade. But I think it's just under 3 pounds, if I remember right. And also a really long blade. So if I remember right, it was actually the ruler's right there. It was 30 or 31 inch long blade. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I have it written down. And just a really, really neat piece. There are some others in the Met that I was hoping to actually, I do have one other one here. Let me pop this one up because it's in the same category. So this is also a very similar one with a much narrower guard. And this one you don't see recreated anywhere. But a very similar type blade in terms of arming swords. This one, though, has a much longer hilt. So if you know where I get my hilt length from, this is kind of one of them. Because when I measured this one, I was surprised. Now, that particular handle on there is not original, obviously. It's been replaced. But that is the proper length. So the pommel and the guard haven't shifted. But yeah, these blades are Type 18s. Actually, this particular blade is what I modeled several of my arming sword types off of. So if that profile looks similar, that's kind of a bad image because you can't see the diamond in it. But I got to get a better image of that blade. But yeah, that Type 18 cut thrust with balance point pulled back more towards the hilt a little bit. It makes the point very lively. And also makes it great for a cut/thrust piece. So I tend to gravitate towards those. Yeah. So those are 2 out of the Royal Armories there. And there's a couple more in the Royal Armories that are similar to that. But yeah, those in terms of arming swords, I could be given here's every arming sword in the Royal Armories, right? Which is hundreds. Pick one, and I would get one of those 2, right? I would just immediately go to one of those 2. And yeah, so if you have one of my arming swords, yourself, it's very similar to one of those 2 pieces. So, yeah. Actually, and Phil, the one that I made for you is also quite similar, even though it's a shorter piece, because these blades are both over 30. I think yours is 27. That's right. Yeah. That historical one, but very similar in proportions and feel. So.
Yep.
Alrighty. So for those watching at home, feel free. Please, I hope you're commenting below on, hey, here's my favorite type. We're going to be going through a bunch here. So let me pop these off. I'm trying to remember. There we go. Remove. So I'm still getting used to these new controls. It's very different. So yeah, I have one more example, if you don't mind, that's in the same category. If you don't mind me covering that one real quick. So now we're jumping to the Wallace collection. So the Wallace collection has one that it's another one that I'm shocked has not been remade yet from any company that I'm aware of. But it is a beautiful piece. And it's this arming sword in the middle here. I do have some better close-up shots of the hilt. But it's a beautiful, it's a iron but gold gilt hilt with an ivory grip. Everything's all original on it, and it's a gorgeous piece. There was a lot of gold that was on the blade as well, but it's worn off over time, so just the bluing is left. But it looks like it has a fuller. That's actually not a fuller. It's a flat section on the blade. And I think that was there for decorative purposes because of the engravings that were on that blade. But it's essentially a Type 18. So this is one that I will recreate at some point. So,
Yeah.
So that's bluing at the base, not a shadow or something.
correct. Yeah, that's blued. It's blued on both sides, and they believe it was blued with gold gilt on top to really make the gold pop. But the gold's worn away. You can kind of see where it was. There's you can't really. You can see a little bit at the base of it. There's like a little. It looks like a little snake-looking thing. It's hard to tell because there's a reflection on this image. And if you ever go to a museum, I learned this well after I took these images. But if you bring an umbrella with you and you pop the umbrella behind you and then you take a picture, it blocks all these glares. So yeah, I didn't know that at the time when I was. This is my first time at the Wallace Collection, so that would have been back before COVID. Even that would have been back like 2017ish or before. Yeah, absolutely beautiful piece. Also, that grip, by the way, it's very similar to the one in your blade, Phil, where it's two halves of ivory that are molded around the tang and then fit together, and then there's caps on each end that are part of the guard and pommel that keep it in place. And
Nice.
that's where I got that idea from. And I'm guessing the one that yours is based on is done the same way. I'm guessing, but I don't know for sure. I've done a lot. I've done a lot of grips like that. So, yeah,
I would definitely. I need to go look at the close-up pictures. I'm assuming I don't. Are these on the Facebook page in this?
Yeah. I forgot to mention. So everything we're sharing here. Yeah, I forgot to mention this. So on our Facebook page, we have loads of images that I've taken from every museum I've been at, and these are right from there. So if you want to see more detailed pictures, and there's a lot more. This is just one. I'm actually going to try to see if I can load. I think I have to remove one image to load another. Hopefully this doesn't mess anything up. Let me try real quick. So I'm going to remove, and let's see if I can add a new one. Here we go.
I am very interested in that one. I don't. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's a close-up on the hilt.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of that.
Very intriguing. Yeah.
So notice the guard or the grip caps on each side are very similar. Actually, Phil, did I send this one to you when we were talking about yours? Because it's very similar.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's probably made by, if not the same shop, a similar shop, because the grip ferrules top and bottom are very similar. So, I saw that. I was actually walking through the museum, and what's funny is above and below this are two very famous falchions. And so when people come to this case, this is the hilt of one right here. When people come to this case, they usually focus on those falchions. And I was there with David Edge at the time, who was one of the curators at the time. And he saw me looking over there. He's like, "Oh, you like those falchions?" I was like, No. I like this army. So he's like, and he was like, "Wow, like most people, kind of don't see that because the falchions there are so famous. They look at those and ignore the arming sword." So he was excited to talk about this piece for quite a while with me. So yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I am very intrigued in that.
Gotta come with me to London.
Yep, that is cool.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Alrighty, Phil, next up.
Okay, well, speaking of falchions, we don't technically have a treatise for falchions, right? We have a treatise for messers, several treatises for messers.
Yeah.
But those treatises often take advantage of things that differentiate the messers from the falchions, like the noggle.
Yeah, they're a little,
or the
little
fact
later.
that the novice messers often have a longer handle that extends down, so that you hold it in one hand, but you can use the base to hook around joints or behind the neck to manipulate your opponent.
Yeah.
But we don't really have a falchion treatise.
No.
So if we had a HEMA cutting tournament that allowed any HEMA weapon, maybe we would allow falchions. But technically, they're not part of HEMA. But especially this weapon, what has grown to be my favorite type of falchion, and I've had a few of them. I think this would need a treatise all to its own. The the Type 2 falchion,
Oh yeah.
because it's often called the reverse edge falchion. So the
Right.
curve you see along the bottom is the spine. You can see the fuller right up next to the spine. There's the spine of the sword, and it extends right on through to a thick thrusting tip.
Yep.
You can see the central ridge going down the thrusting tip. And then you have a very thin piece of steel here, like sort of hanging off the bottom of the spike. This is like a spike for powerfully thrusting into things. And then once you get close, you can hack them to pieces with the edge.
Yeah.
This one, this is the third one that I've had from Maciej Kopchuk, who is the sword maker at the art of sword making.
Yep.
And he's someone who's made sort of a name for himself for making a bunch of Type 2s. If you go to his website, look in his gallery of the swords he's made, he has a whole section for Type 2 falchions, or for falchions, but of the 24, 25 in there, only a couple are other types, mostly Type 2 falchions. Because it's a complicated weapon to make. But he did it well. There are two famous surviving examples of Type 2 falchions. One is in, this was based on the one that's in the Paris Museum. And it's a smaller of the two. I've done a review and cutting video with the larger of the two. And it's more of it's like, I want to say 3 or 4 inches longer and a much more massive blade. But this particular sword, he's been working on this design for me for about 3 years at least. And he'll make one, but it'll be 100 grams too heavy, 150 grams too heavy, because it's tough to get it right.
Yeah.
You have to remove so much material and just from the right places. But this one is right at 1 kilogram. Point of balance at about, I want to say about 4 inches. So it feels really nimble, light. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing a review of this one. I just got it maybe a month ago, if that. And he did a really good job on the grip. This is one of the most comfortable grip pommel combinations that I've used. It's got a nice palm swell, but then you see how that big bronze pommel is shaped.
Yep.
It just fits right in your hand, and there's nothing uncomfortable about that. It just fits right. You can see it just fits right alongside the hand.
Yeah.
No pressure points at all. Really, really nice. So, yeah, I've done reviews of his. I had one of these for a while that he had just made. It was up for sale, so I bought it. But it was probably a good 200 grams heavier than this, and you can really feel it. It felt much more, much less nimble than this does.
Just lack of distal taper, or was just more meat on the full flat there?
It's a good question. I don't have it. If I compared the two, I'm sure you could see where the difference is.
Yeah.
I haven't asked him where, because he's like, okay, before I send it to you, let me see if I can take a few more ounces off here and there. But he didn't tell me exactly where he was doing it, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
I've seen the
Another
images.
interesting fact.
I was gonna say I've seen the images. I'm not gonna lie. I'd love to get one of those at some point.
Yeah.
Ask him if you want one. Ask him for one like this, because this is. He said this is his closest. He's as close as he's come to that original in the Paris Museum.
Yeah, I've seen that, but I wasn't able to hold it. It was behind glass, so I couldn't mess with it.
Yeah. Now, one thing about Type 2s, now when I flip it over,
yeah, it's different.
You seeing this?
Yep.
Perfectly flat.
Yeah.
Those fullers are gone. The central ridge is gone. It's a flat sheet of steel. That's how the originals were made. They just had the fullers on one side.
Yeah. Is that true for all of them? I'm not sure.
Like I say, we've got 2 examples, and they're both that way.
Yeah,
So
well,
yes,
do we only
based
have
on
two?
our sample size, we've got
Hmm.
all of them are that way.
I
Unless there's
guess-
a third one that's out there that's not that way.
Well, not really. Well, so there's a lot of artwork of them, and I'm curious if the artwork shows that as well. It might, which I'll be curious to study that. James would know, right? James Emsley, he would know. Yeah, they're
You could ask
super
them.
neat. Yeah, they're super neat, and I've never tried one yet, but I definitely want to try one. So, yeah. So
Yeah,
what's funny?
unfortunately, I can't tell you how this one feels. I haven't cut with it yet, but it's going to feel so much different than the other 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the edge pretty stout or is it super thin?
It's a very fine edge, and the thing about these that I've discussed is that when I go to sharpen it, it's going to have a 20-degree bevel
Yeah.
on the side,
Just
but
on
then
the
this side is already perfectly flat.
Right.
So it's going to be a 20-degree edge rather than a 40-degree edge.
Yeah.
And I spoke about that in an earlier video. That's probably a reason, or one reason to do it this way is because you'll have a much finer cutting edge.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Because it's just
that Queen's Gambit tournament sounds like they're going to allow any arming sword you want, including cautions. So there you go. But yeah, those are super, very different. What's funny about those? So when I first saw Braveheart, the guy who picked some of the blades for, especially the Scottish, even though it's not historically accurate at all with the way they did it, he actually had a couple of those in there. And no one really knew what they were at the time. So they're like, what is that? Like, everybody thought it was just like a made-up piece for Braveheart. It's like, no, that's an actual sword. So, granted, they were not accurate in that film, but it was the same blade type. Yeah. Yeah, that's nice.
That is
He's
really
doing some
nice.
great work.
if you think, yeah, I must say it's lacking the. Almost all of his pieces have what look like almost intentional hammer marks left, or slight casting flaws left, or a peen that's not quite done perfectly.
Yeah, well, we do the same.
To give it that handmade aesthetic, right?
Yep.
Because that's his. There's a big debate and people are always talking about it, but he's definitely on the side of leaving it with some handmade look.
Yep. Yeah, I personally like that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
But everybody has different tastes. But yeah, that's my personal taste too. I had one from him a little while ago that was Type 16, because he's also known for doing those. Not many people do the Type 16s, especially the ones with the short guards that are all over museums. But he did one that I really liked, and I grabbed that a while ago. It's somewhere back over there, so I have to go find it. Yeah, awesome.
You're reminding me of the sword reviews I have to do. I have an Ulfbert that was made by him as well, with the
really?
Inlaid Ulfbert. Yeah.
Oh man.
Tradition. He did it. Yeah, he did it as in what he believes is the authentic traditional way of putting the Ulfbert in there.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that. That'd be pretty neat. Did he post that one at all?
Yeah. He's probably posted pictures of some. I don't know that he posted the one they made for me. And he asked me not to discuss any details of, because he sort of mentioned how he had put the letters in there. But I think, if you follow his Facebook page, he likes to write articles and do research on things. So he's probably going to write an article on how he feels it was done and how he does it. So so I can't share that, but
we're talking about him enough that I might link him below. So if you see his link below, that's why, because we're talking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Highly recommend.
He does good work.
Yeah,
he does good work. Really nice scabbards too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was one of the reasons why I bought that Type 16, because the scabbard it came with. It was really nice. Yeah, now that we have our website going, we're definitely going to be having some sections where we're going to be writing some articles and stuff too. So look for that coming up in the future here. But yeah, that's super neat.
Awesome. That's good.
Options are definitely on my list as well, but they're going to be coming up in a little bit. Especially if I can see some images here and pull some new ones up. What's crazy though is there's so many types of Falchions, but in the terms of the reproduction market, we only see maybe 2 or 3 types. Definitely the more messer looking type fashions. So it's neat to see, the more extreme types. I wouldn't even call that extreme. It was actually quite common, and especially the early 1200s. So, neat to see more of those. So continuing with the Wallace, I got a couple more from there. So next one from that I have from the Wallace collection is continuing that same theme that I've been on the whole time. But this one is another one of those big boys. So I think a lot of folks know this one. All right, this is a pretty famous one. Arms and Armor makes a version of this. My favorite part of this is that hilt. That hilt, I actually make that pommel quite often for a lot of my Type 18 blades. So if you're wondering where I get that pommel shape from, it is from this piece. So I either scale it a little bit, because this sword is huge, right? It's huge and heavy. So although it's not as long as the one from the Met that I showed earlier, it's actually a little bit shorter. It's a much wider blade, and it stays wider throughout its whole width. So it's a pretty chunky blade for its size. The really neat thing about that is that grip is still intact. So it's very neat to see. In fact, it's so rare that there's questions, wait, is that the original grip? Or was that redone in maybe the 1800s or something? But I'm pretty sure the belief is that is original. So, yeah, it's another beautiful piece. Nathan has at Arms and Armor, I think he's gone over to seeing this one, but they have the direct castings for this right off of this piece that they do theirs with at Arms and Armor. And the blade is, again, identical to that one as well. So if you want this one, a version of it, it exists, which is really neat. But yeah, absolutely love this piece. This is also very similar to the one that Matt Easton collaborated with the Royal Armory on, but the pommel's slightly different. Other than the pommel, the whole overall blade is very similar. The guard's very similar. And this is also, by the way, the grip and the hilt that the Principe used, but changed the blade out, right? So they put an 18C blade on this hilt. So that also required them to beef up that pommel. So the Principe pommel is this version, but much thicker, right? So because they had to. So yeah, super sweet blade. If you're in London, this is at the Wallace collection. And then I have one more from the Wallace that is going off a different route. So I can't remember who. I felt it might have been you. I'm not sure, but in terms of cutting with complex hilt longswords, is that okay in your tournaments? I couldn't remember if that was a yes or a no. Depends, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, we don't allow that. We don't want that either for the single hand swords or the long sword.
Okay.
We want you because we do include aspects of thrusting as well, and that could give someone an advantage, which technically they could still just loop their finger over the cross guard, but we also, if we see people doing that, we ask them not to do that as well.
We don't want people cutting themselves.
They don't have an advantage.
That's happened more than once now, right? Or someone went, whoops, and then they cut their finger. It's like, why would you do that?
It happened, a couple of years ago, pretty famously,
Yeah.
Using my Angus trim army sword, and it was very sharp right there by the cross.
Yeah. You think you'd check that, right? Before you.
I would hope so.
Yeah, but yeah, one of those. So complex hilt longswords they're pretty. I got a flying. They're pretty common post, pretty much 16th century, right, and on. So like a lot of the Mayer stuff and Lichtenauer stuff, you might be using with a complex longsword. But there's one at the Wallace collection that I saw a while ago, and again, this is another blade that I'm shocked that no one has recreated this yet. So it's also on my list, but complex hilts are complex. So this one's not quite as complex as some of them, but so this guy is one I got a chance to play around with upstairs with David Edge when I was there on the second time. And just the overall hilt construction, so for when I do rapier work, I'm a big clamshell Pappenheimer type rapier work. So I saw this longsword that has pretty much a Pappenheimer type a guard, but on a longsword, and the grip and hilt, everything's intact. And I was like, whoa! Like I really like this one. You can see the images taken of it at various sides here. So that's giddy me holding it in my hand. But the blade is super long. I believe the blade was 38 or 39 inches long. It's fullered on each side. However, the fullers are nowhere near even. One is about halfway up the blade. The other one's only about a third of the way up the blade. So the fullers are very different. Also, you'll notice, due to the nature of the hilt, with an upswing down and then a downturn on the other side, you're really intended to use this one direction, right? You can't just flip the blade over. It's not symmetrical. So let me pull in. I got one more image of this, but I got to, again, remove something to pull a new one in. One sec. So I got a detailed image of the hilt here. So the pommel was unique. The guard was unique. So this one you can't actually put your finger over. But just the fact that that guard is so protective. I actually wanted to, when I first saw this, I wanted to take this hilt and make fetters out of it. Because everyone sparring would love this hilt. So, because it's very protective of your hand. But I think this one dates to 1630, if I remember right. The other neat thing with this blade, so I got a chance to play with it and actually swing it around a little bit. I was a little worried when I was talking with Dave. I was like, hey, is this all right? Like, I don't want to... Is it okay if I actually swing it? He's like, yeah, go ahead. So I was like, okay. So, and there's not much room up there, and this is the top floor of the Wallace. And there's not much room there. So I'm like, making sure I'm not hitting the ceiling. But yeah, so the little risers that they have on there is right in the perfect size. If you look at the shape of that grip and you think of the longswords that I make, a lot of it's based on that shape. That particular shape I just really liked of all the longswords I personally handle. The other cool thing with this one, this is the first time I saw an original hilt. I don't have the image here, but some of the leather on, I don't think you can see it here, but some of the leather, it's possibly on the other side, is chipped away, and you can see the bare wood underneath it. And there was a lot of, when I was actually at the museum at the time, there was a lot of debate online whether grips like this had cord underneath or not. And my thought was, it probably depends, right? Some of them did, some of them didn't. And this is an example that does not have cord underneath. You can see the wood directly. It's leather on top of wood. They did the cord imprint over top, but there isn't cord underneath. So it's a neat example. And this is also one of the Passau wolf blades, by the way. So it has the gold etched running wolf in it. And yeah, this is a really nice piece. It's pretty lively for its size. I think it's just over 3 pounds, maybe 3 pounds 1 or 2. But yeah, really pretty blade, very unique, and again on my list at some point. I've never seen that pommel anywhere else either. This is the only blade I know that has that pommel. So I'm sure others exist, but yeah, I just had a lot of fun with that one.
It's kind of funny because as we're sitting here looking, I'm picturing how I'm gonna make that pommel. It's like, oh man, that's really cool. I wonder how I would do that.
So it is hollow ground in each of the 3 faces.
Yeah,
right. Or 4. Sorry,
it's
4 faces.
3-sided. It's 4. Okay.
Sorry, 4. So yeah, I misspoke there.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was doing a lot of longsword sparring, and I still do as much as I can, but nowhere near as much as I was at this time. And I was always a big fan of the 2-ring fetters, just because of the extra protection it gives you. So when I saw this one with pretty much that Pappenheimer shell on each side, I was like, oh, that's what I want when I'm sparring. So, but this would also be a great cutter, I believe, as well. In terms of blade geometry, it's more like that Type 19 that you see on a lot of 16th century blades, where it's kind of hex pattern, but I don't think it's due to age or anything. The hex pattern is not at all crisp on this one. It's very rounded out. I don't think that's due to age or anything. I think that's how it was originally made. The blade is not very refined. I can go back to that other one that shows the blade a bit more. Well, you can't really tell there. But it's pretty much, it is a hexagonal cross section, but kind of. It's a mix between a hexagonal cross section and an oval cross section. That was pretty common during that time period. So, yeah, pretty unique piece. I guess I'm always drawn to very unique pieces that I don't see anywhere else. So, yeah, hopefully I will get a version of that sometime soon.
Very cool.
Alrighty, Phil, back to you.
All right, so
I guess time
last
out.
but not least,
I was saying, this is your last one? Yeah.
yep. So as you know, I've recently started a translation of the Bemmer typology of migration period swords.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation recently with someone, I won't name them, but they're very confused about when the migration period was. They thought it was after the Viking era.
Oh.
So
Nope.
it's maybe not a very well understood period of time.
Right.
And it doesn't help, as far as the sword community goes, that really primary source for the typology is only written in German. There are no translations that I've found, so I'm translating from German into English.
Yeah.
And I'll get you a copy as soon as I'm done. But
I was trying to remember, when was that work done?
that was a doctoral dissertation in 1939. So right at the beginning of World War II. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
I don't
So
know,
translated into German.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I have an example of an early migration period sword. As far as the handling goes, it's really, really nice in demonstrating what early migration period swords were like, because they're based off of they started, as Roman spatha that then had I guess that then sort of evolved into the swords that are used during the migration period. It's an interesting history here. I guess the Romans had the gladius, right?
Mhm.
And then apparently, or what I've read is that they, after interactions with the Celts in Britain, they encountered the Celtic long sword, and so in a effort to, there's a period in the late sort of decline of the Roman Empire where they were wanted to revamp their weapons. They revised various types of spears. They also made the spatha,
Yeah.
and then that spatha then helps to influence again the swords from the same region. When we have these migration era swords from Britain. Anyway, this thing is only about 1.5 pounds.
Yeah.
The blade length is, let's see, about 30 inches.
Yeah.
And the point of balance is about, I think, 7.5 inches, but it feels great. I mean, I know, Chris, you've handled sort of light, nimble Chinese Jian or Dao. They're very light, but then to make up for that or make them more martially sound or more effective on the battlefield, you put the point of balance way out.
Yep.
And if you get that just right, it feels wonderful, right?
Yeah.
And this feels to me like a really well balanced, nimble, light, almost like a Jian.
Yeah.
So I would love to. Go ahead.
A lot of the Roman spatha feel that way as well. Some of them are a little heavier, but yeah, there's some light ones that feel just like that. Balance is way out there.
Yeah. So I would love to play around with this and do some cutting and so forth, but unfortunately, this was made by an Indian forge that didn't heat treat the blade very well. So if I were to take the tip and flex it and let go, it would still stay somewhat curved at least, because it's a bit soft, the heat treatment.
That might be true to the
So,
original one. So,
you're probably right. In fact, you are right. I mean, there was a saying back then that the most swords were like that. They're too soft, and that a sword that would you could flex and then spring back to true was worth much more than its weight in gold.
yeah.
It's something that was from that I heard from that period. That I read from that period. So
Well,
yeah, you're right.
Burials. Remember the burials with all the swords that they would actually twist up, right, to put in the burial with. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, I think
How's that
sometimes they
grip,
would heat them, right? Huh?
How's that grip? That looks pretty comfy.
It is. It is. The one thing that I would do, and that I've seen in the pictures in the BIM typology, is it looks the metal spacers are just sort of crude, sort of rectangular, right angles.
Right.
In the original swords, they would be rounded here, so So this all was like one big arc, and that would be a lot more comfortable when you grip it, because I think it's right at maybe 3 3/4 or 4 inches. So on my hand, that fits just right.
Yeah.
And it's not uncomfortable, but it'd be more comfortable if those edges were gone, if it was rounded.
Right.
Plus, if you notice here, the blade goes right through the metal plate and is resting against the wood. Not good either, right? So,
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a nice example to be able to hold it and say, "Wow, this is how it should feel." But yeah, I'd love to have one. If you wouldn't mind making one for me, Chris, that that has these characteristics, but is durable.
Oh.
And
get to that in a second.
do some cutting with it.
Yeah.
And along those lines, do you have the picture of Colton's latest piece?
So I don't. I was trying to pull it up. Colton, do you have an image of yours? So I was gonna say you're kind of speaking our. Oh, he has it with him.
He has the original for Show and Tell. There you go.
Hold on.
I didn't know if we were going to get into this, but here it is.
Did you mention to Chris that I bought that from you?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an opportune time to put that sword up for sale, Colton, because that was exactly as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, I have to have that.
It's a beautiful piece.
That is gorgeous. And again, that's like 1.5 pounds.
Yeah, 1.8. Yep, right on 1.5. And this one, oh my gosh! Now you're gonna test my memory here. It's closer to a 6-inch balance. So
is it 6 or 6.5? I can't remember. Yeah,
I think it was 6 1/4. I got it.
That sounds right.
There.
Yeah.
So yeah. So right on there, but
yeah. We love
nice.
Roman spadas are another one of my favorite types of blades, as well as Gladius. And Colton and I have been talking about this for a while now. And he started making one, but I thought he was going to take longer, so he's made it so quickly. So I have a spada and a Gladius in the works at the moment. And
are you doing a pointed one, infantry one, or a cavalry one?
For the more
for the spada?
Cavalry. Yeah, so I'm actually about to show the example that I'm basing one of mine on.
Okay. So I was watching a video recently. I guess the infantry were made with sharp points for thrusting.
Right. Yeah.
And then the cavalry had the rounded tip for the better slashing.
Yep. And
characteristics,
But yeah, I'm a huge fan of all of those types of blades that eventually would morph into the migration era blades, right?
Yeah.
I think the migration areas are neat because you got several influences there, right? So you got, not only I used the wrong mouse. Not only the Celtic influence, but I think the Germanic tribes at the time also had some influence at the same time. So all these different things,
for sure,
all around the Roman Empire, and they're just getting combined into one, which makes sense for the name of the blade, the migration era type blade. So. But yeah,
well, that's actually the name. That's actually the name of Bimmer's book is, the Germanic sword of the migration period.
Yeah. Okay.
So he describes it as a Germanic sword.
I mean, it makes sense. So yeah, I've always been a huge fan of Roman stuff, and then when Patrick Barta, if you guys know who that is, made this one piece, I'm pretty sure I had it as my background on my computer for I was probably early 20s at the time, and I had it as my background for a good 3 years. So that's this piece here. I wish I could make it. Actually, let me get the hilt for it. So I think I brought in the hilt. Did I? So you see the scabbard is what, at least I think, Colton, what you used to base your scabbard off of.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, we were looking at these last time we were talking on here, and I was just like, oh man, that is really cool. I'm gonna try to make kind of that half crescent round shape on there. So
yeah, so that, I mean, I saw this piece and I was like, oh my gosh. So that was my background on my computer for quite a while. So I'm currently making a spada very similar to this. Obviously, I'm not doing the silver and gold inlay because I don't have the ability to, or the access to the materials to do that. So my grip will be slightly different and more on the traditional spada materials. So either bone and or like a light walnut. The guard and pommel there, though, are either a dark walnut or an ebony. I think it's a dark walnut that he used on this one. And that gold and silver inlay is right over top of more walnut. And I don't know if this is based on an original or not, but man, it definitely illustrates the beauty of some of those original spadas that were in the Roman times. And so the Gladius one I'm doing will be a different color scheme, and obviously will be more of a what's the word for it? More of like the main style blade. But I'll have finger grooves. So a lot of the spadas that I've seen don't have the finger grooves, whereas a lot of the Gladius, actually all the Gladiuses that I'm aware of, have the finger grooves. And I'm not sure why that is, other than when you're on cavalry, right, and you're not thrusting, those finger grooves may not be as important. I don't know the answer to that, but that's my guess. Yeah, so also this blade looks like it has double fullers, but it's actually not. Those are flat. So this is a octagonal section blade. So it's a 8 flat or 4 flat sides per side, which is also quite popular with spada blades. So they're also diamond shaped. Mine will probably be more diamond shaped. But then they also did have fullers as well. Some of them had like 5 and 6 fullers that were super thin. So they ranged all over the place. So yeah, Roman blades are great. I kind of wish we had some sort of HEMA thing for the Roman. So I guess there is, but it's not based on, at least not that I'm aware of. It's not based on like manuals and stuff. But there's a lot of reenactments for Roman stuff. So I don't know if I'd call that HEMA. But yeah, some really cool stuff, from the weapons to the armor, to the the ballistas and everything else. So,
yeah.
Todd's still trying to sell his Roman ballista, by the way. If I could afford that, I would. But yeah, I think he wants 11 grand for it, and yeah, I can't afford that. So.
You've got the room for it.
I do have room for it. Yeah, I wish I could afford it. He's selling the plans for
using those hogs.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. Some of the other blades I was hoping to show, by the way. Again, I'm limited on my images here, but yeah, Chinese. You mentioned it earlier. I'm a huge fan of Chinese blades as well. Whether it's a Gen or a Dao, I did lean towards Dao growing up. So I grew up in the Chinese martial arts and got a chance to work with Scott Rodell a lot. Well, I can't say a lot. I worked with him a little bit, and he really helped our whole style, because a lot of Chinese styles in martial arts nowadays, we actually don't use the appropriate swords that we should be using because of that kind of early 19th century, early 20th, or late 19th century, early 20th century kind of modernization of the Chinese martial arts for like showmanship. So like wushu got really popular, and those like tinfoil, really thin blades became very popular for showcasing, but those aren't at all historical, right? So a lot of the historical blades got lost in the martial arts. So he's been leading a movement for years now to bring them back. So using the appropriate Daos for the appropriate time period for the arts that you're doing is it's somewhat new. It's kind of like the resurgence of Pima, but on the Chinese side. And yeah, some historical dowels I've held, especially, it's hard to find ones that are made really well, but when they are, because a lot of dowels you can tell that are surviving were more like munitions grade type, like they just needed something quick and a blacksmith hammer something out really quickly, especially the ones at the Met. Actually, I think a lot of those, they date to the 1700s. Honestly, I think they're 19th century. I think they're later. But Scott would be the author, or the authority, I should say, on that. He would know better than me. They just looked more modern made. But yeah, a traditional dowel, like a goose quill dowel or a willow leaf dowel, which are the more katana shaped ones, not the ones that flare out at the end. Although I like those as well. If you got a good race skin wrap on the hilt, and then the good bronze work and the garden pommel, they're just really pretty blades. The other ones too that are not really well known, but they're very similar to Roman blades, are those older Han Dynasty style Chinese blades. A lot of them, especially the gens, they actually look like spadas. So it's like, and it's the time period kind of works out. So it's like they had to be doing some trading there, right? So you can see the influence. At least I think you can see the influence between those two. So it's neat. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I think that kind of. I mean, we're actually over an hour. I didn't realize that. Hopefully, I'm not keeping you guys too long here. But yeah, for you guys watching, if you've hung out the whole time, hopefully you have. Hopefully you've gotten a lot of drink down, and maybe you learned something about some historical blades you may not have known before. And let us know what your favorite blades are. And yeah, I'm excited. So we'll probably do some more topics on this. Maybe we'll focus on different types of blades in terms of, we kind of gave a very broad spectrum here, but maybe we'll focus that. Let's say, okay, let's focus on, Chinese blades or Japanese blades or Roman, and just do a full episode just on that, because we probably could. Especially those curved blades, the Ottoman, those Ottoman ones seem pretty neat and not very well known. Yeah. So,
true.
Well, thanks, Phil, for joining us. Hope you had a good time. And we have to do a sword movie trivia soon. we haven't done one in a bit. Sure. So, alrighty. Well, we want to do some outros real quick, and then we'll call it a night. Phil, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Phillip Martin. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube under Phillip Martin. And if you're in the Phoenix area, stop by the Phoenix Society, and I do cutting classes once a month.
Awesome. Is Valley of the Sun already planned for next year?
The dates and so forth? No, we're probably going to move it back to January though, because that February date was not good for a lot of people. So we'll probably be in mid-January. Okay.
So if you want to go to a great cutting competition, it's just cutting. Valley of the Sun. Right. Yeah, a very fun tournament. It's got to be the biggest cutting only tournament, right? Because I think it's the only cutting tournament. Right?
I think so. Yeah.
So definitely make it out there if you can, and all the vendors and stuff are out there as well. So it's a great tournament to get to.
Yeah, for sure.
Colton, you're up.
Yeah, I'm Colton. You could find me Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all under Copperthorn, and you could definitely find me over on Sterling Armory.
Yeah, in fact, our Sterling Armory webpage, that now that it's working, we have some blades up there, and they're all Colton's. So I think you have 5 up there right now, or 4,
maybe 4 or 5. Yeah.
But they're available, and I am shocked that some of them are still there. I might buy one myself. So, but yeah, now that the website's up, as soon as we get stuff available, we're going to be putting it on there. Unless we're getting ready for a convention. When we're getting ready for a convention, we're going to pull everything off, because convention's going to have to come first, right? Or a show or a tournament. But if you see something on there, message us, and we'll let you know if it's available. So yeah, I'm Chris. Again, find us on Facebook, or if you found us here, you found our YouTube page. So please like and subscribe and all that stuff. And yeah, we're excited for some more of these, and we're getting back into the rhythm, which is a good thing. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. Alrighty. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.